74.5 billion dirhams. That is not the budget for another record-breaking skyscraper. It is not the cost of a new artificial island. That is the approved budget for a strategy to manage what the city leaves behind. A historical document from the Dubai municipality once noted that the Al Qusais landfill received roughly 7,000 tons of municipal waste every single day, transported by over 1,200 trucks. To fix this, Dubai built a colossal machine capable of processing 5,666 tons of waste daily. But official figures show that even this massive capacity only represents about 45% of the Emirates' municipal waste. The problem is not that Dubai does not know how to handle its garbage. The problem is that the city must continuously build larger and more expensive systems just to keep up with what it creates. This is not a story about trash lining the streets. This is a story about the staggering cost required to ensure that trash never appears on those streets. To understand this trap, we have to follow a single garbage bag after it vanishes from sight. Every time a garbage truck slowly pulls away from a residential complex or a glittering hotel, a fundamental psychological trick is played on the human mind. We tie the plastic bag, drop it into a bin, and the moment it leaves our physical space, we consider the problem solved. The area is clean, the aesthetic is maintained, the transaction feels complete. But the reality of urban infrastructure operates on a completely different set of physical laws. The problem has not vanished, it has merely been relocated. Dubai does not eliminate its waste at the curb. The city executes an incredibly complex, highly synchronized operation of heavy machinery to move that waste out of the immediate vision of its residents and tourists. Garbage is not a static physical object that you can simply discard. It is a continuous, relentless, and heavy flow of material. A modern metropolis only remains pristine when this aggressive flow is never permitted to stop, not even for a few hours. The cleanliness of the streets is an optical illusion maintained by a sprawling, hidden network of transfer stations, weighbridges, heavy transport vehicles, and remote processing facilities. It requires an army of workers operating in the shadows of the skyline, managing a logistical chain that is constantly under tension. When a city is built on the promise of uninterrupted luxury, any disruption in this chain is a critical failure. The real danger is not that a single bag of trash sits on a sidewalk. The danger is that the sheer volume of these bags requires a continuously expanding highway of waste management. And a system that depends on constant motion is inherently fragile. A single bottleneck anywhere in the network can send shockwaves of pressure backward, all the way to the pristine hotel lobbies. We must stop looking at a clean street as proof that there is no garbage. We must start looking at a clean street as proof of an enormous logistical operation running at maximum capacity. But what happens when the input of this material flow accelerates far beyond the speed at which the destination was designed to receive it? Economic growth and tourism success are almost universally measured by the movement of people. Authorities announce record-breaking passenger arrivals at the airport, soaring hotel occupancy rates, and booming retail footfall. But urban infrastructure does not measure growth in ticket sales or social media updates. It measures growth in the raw, heavy, and unavoidable material left behind after those people depart. The tourism boom is essentially a massive importation of physical matter. Let us look at a single hotel stay. At the front end, a visitor's arrival is recorded as revenue. But at the back end, that exact same arrival initiates a highly resource-intensive chain reaction. Food is trucked into the city. Elaborate packaging is torn open and discarded. Thousands of gallons of desalinated water are pumped through pipes for continuous laundry cycles. Disposable amenities are used once and thrown away. Everything that enters the city to sustain this experience eventually turns into a liability that must be physically moved out of it. The hospitality industry operates as a giant funnel, pulling in global resources and converting them into localized waste. Tourism is not just a gentle stream of visitors, it is an industrial-scale flow of physical goods that must be managed, processed, and buried. The city is essentially importing the components of its own infrastructural strain. If a destination is setting records for welcoming people, it is simultaneously setting records for generating waste. For years, the most cost-effective way to deal with this relentless output was the simplest solution known to human engineering: Just dig a massive hole in the ground far away from the city center. The desert, vast and empty, seemed to offer an endless buffer against the consequences of endless growth. The desert creates a very dangerous illusion for city planners. When you look out into the vast, sandy expanse, it seems as though there will always be enough empty space to dig another trench, dump another layer of debris, and cover it up with earth. It looks like an infinite canvas for disposal. But a modern municipal landfill is not just a hole in the sand. It is an incredibly complex, highly regulated, and extremely expensive piece of civil engineering. In 2021, official data from the Dubai municipality indicated that the city relied on 6 landfills, covering a combined area of approximately 1.6 million square meters. That is a massive footprint dedicated entirely to holding the physical memory of the city's consumption. However, the true shock lies in the projection of the future. The municipality warned that if waste generation continued without a radical strategic intervention, the land area required for these landfills could swell to 5.8 million square meters by the year 2041. We are not talking about a small expansion. A landfill requires dedicated transport roads capable of handling thousands of heavy trucks. It requires advanced synthetic liners to prevent toxic liquid from seeping into the earth. It requires intricate gas management systems to safely handle the methane generated by millions of tons of rotting material. You do not simply throw waste onto the sand. You transform a piece of land into a permanent, multi-decade engineering liability. Even long after a landfill reaches its maximum capacity and is closed, it requires decades of continuous environmental monitoring and security. Dubai does not face the immediate risk of running out of physical desert. What Dubai faces is the terrifying prospect of having to convert more and more of its valuable land into highly toxic infrastructure just to manage the fallout of its own economic success. A historical document from the city once recorded that the Al Qusais landfill alone was receiving an astonishing 7,000 tons of municipal waste every single day, requiring a daily fleet of more than 1,200 heavy trucks. The mountain of waste does not necessarily have to grow taller to become a crisis. It can simply spread outward horizontally, consuming land, demanding more trucks, destroying road surfaces, and driving up operational costs until the budget snaps. The crisis happens when the speed of waste generation forces the technology to constantly play catch-up. While construction debris and plastic packaging take up massive amounts of space, the type of waste that puts the most immediate, volatile pressure on an urban system is not always the largest. It is the food. Food waste serves as the direct bridge between individual human behavior and citywide infrastructural strain. Imagine the back of a high-end restaurant kitchen. Follow a kitchen worker at the end of a busy shift. Look at the prep stations and the dishwashing area. A single piece of uneaten steak, a handful of rice scraped off a plate, or an over-ordered supply of vegetables going soft may look completely insignificant in isolation. But municipal infrastructure does not deal with single plates. It deals with the aggregate weight of millions of meals across thousands of kitchens, day after day. When all of this uneaten food is consolidated, mixed with other trash, and sealed in plastic, it ceases to be food. It transforms into wet, heavy organic matter. When this matter is buried deep inside a landfill and deprived of oxygen, it undergoes anaerobic decomposition. This process actively generates methane, turning the landfill into a ticking biological reactor. Food waste takes a fleeting consumer decision and turns it into a hazardous management obligation that lasts for years. Before a city can even attempt to solve a problem of this magnitude, it must first understand exactly how much it is creating and where it is coming from. This is why the national initiative known as NEMA launched a comprehensive baseline study running from September 2024 to March 2026, specifically targeting food loss across the United Arab Emirates. Prior to this, tracking the exact scale of the waste across the entire food chain was incredibly difficult. You cannot fix what you cannot accurately measure. The sheer effort required to launch a national campaign just to figure out how much food is being thrown away proves that the system is operating under tremendous pressure. When growth happens so fast that even baseline data struggles to keep up, the infrastructure is flying blind. And Dubai has already received a very clear historical warning about what exactly happens when demand arrives before the capacity to handle it is built. It did not start at a garbage dump. It started with water. A city's infrastructure does not necessarily collapse with a loud, dramatic explosion. It usually begins to break down quietly, measured in minutes and hours of waiting time. To understand the peril of delayed infrastructure, we have to look back at a defining historical moment. On September 29, 2008, the newspaper The National reported on a severe bottleneck at the Al-Awir sewage treatment plant. At the time, the city's rapid development had completely outpaced its underground drainage network. Because new districts were built before the pipes could connect them to the main system, raw wastewater had to be pumped into fleets of tanker trucks and driven across the city to the treatment facility. The newspaper documented an astonishing crisis. Nearly 10,000 tanker trucks were converging on a facility that only had a few dozen discharge points. The resulting traffic jam of waste was monumental. One driver, Omar Khan, reported waiting approximately 10 hours just to discharge a single load. Other reports indicated that wait times stretched up to an agonizing 18 hours. Imagine the human and economic toll. Drivers forced to sleep in their cabs in the sweltering heat, their daily incomes slashed because they could not complete their scheduled trips. When the final link in the chain is blocked, the pressure immediately reverses direction. The prolonged wait times inevitably led to some drivers illegally dumping untreated wastewater to escape the queue, creating severe environmental hazards. The historical crisis of 2008 did not happen because Dubai lacked technology. It happened because the sheer volume of demand arrived far before the processing capacity was ready to absorb it. A rapidly growing city cannot afford to just build massive infrastructure. It must build that infrastructure before the bottleneck appears. The sewage crisis was eventually mitigated through rapid government expansion of treatment plants, but the lesson remained permanently etched into the city's blueprint. Fixing a bottleneck requires spending vast sums of money to quickly add massive capacity just to stabilize the system. Today, facing a similar pressure from solid waste, Dubai has constructed a colossal machine designed to turn the problem into power. For a few minutes, it looks like the perfect answer. Rising from the industrial landscape is the Dubai Waste Management Center in Warsan, a facility that represents the most aggressive technical counterattack the city has ever launched against its own garbage. Costing approximately 4 billion dirhams according to the Dubai municipality, this waste-to-energy plant is a marvel of modern engineering. The process is mesmerizing in its brutal efficiency. Fleets of trucks dump their loads into a massive receiving pit. Giant mechanical grabbers, operated by highly focused technicians, lift tons of mixed refuse and drop it directly into the raging infernos of the incinerators. The immense heat, generated by burning the waste, boils water, creating high-pressure steam. That steam spins massive turbines, generating electricity that is fed straight back into the national grid. The system effectively takes the very material that was destined to rot in the desert and turns it into electricity. When you watch the process unfold, it feels like the story has reached a triumphant conclusion. The technology has won. But hiding in plain sight, on the very data sheets published by the municipality, is a single percentage that shatters this illusion of total victory. The Warsan facility is capable of processing about 1.9 million tons of waste per year. That breaks down to an impressive 5,666 tons every single day. Yet, official figures confirm that this massive capacity only represents roughly 45% of Dubai's total municipal solid waste. One of the largest and most advanced waste processing plants ever built does not prove that the garbage problem has become small. The unprecedented scale of the machine actually proves just how terrifyingly large the problem truly is. If swallowing over 5,600 tons a day only takes care of less than half of the municipal waste stream, the total volume of material moving through the city is staggering. There is a common misunderstanding about incineration. Fire has the power to change the physical state of a problem, but it does not make the problem vanish from existence. A waste-to-energy plant can drastically shrink the volume of the garbage. It can recover a valuable percentage of the energy trapped inside the material. But it is entirely powerless to fix the root cause of the crisis, which sits at the very beginning of the supply chain. Incineration is a reaction to consumption, not a cure for it. Furthermore, the combustion process still leaves behind bottom ash and residual matter that must be carefully treated, transported, and stored in specialized locations. The beast still needs to be fed, and the residue still needs to be managed. The city continues to generate an expanding avalanche of physical matter, handing the entire burden over to the infrastructure to sort out at the end of the line. A waste-to-energy facility is not a magic eraser that deletes the consequences of endless urban growth. It is simply a highly advanced, incredibly expensive pressure valve. It relieves the immediate strain on the landfills, buying the city precious time. But as the population grows, as the tourism records continue to break, and as the real estate sector hands over thousands of new keys, the pressure will inevitably rise again. When that happens, the city's response cannot just be measured in tons of processed trash. It must be measured in money. In January 2022, the Executive Council of Dubai officially approved the integrated waste management strategy spanning the next 2 decades, from 2021 to 2041. The financial figure attached to this strategy is so large it demands absolute attention: 74.5 billion dirhams, approximately 20 billion US dollars. Of this staggering amount, 70.5 billion dirhams is expected to come directly from private sector partnerships. You should not look at this 74.5 billion dirham invoice as proof that Dubai has failed. What that number actually proves is far more sobering. The act of simply controlling the physical consequences of extreme growth has mutated into a 2-decade-long mega infrastructure program. This is no longer a story about dispatching a few extra garbage trucks to a new neighborhood. This is a massive financial, technical, and territorial obligation written into the city's future all the way until 2041. This budget must cover an entire ecosystem of survival. It must fund campaigns to reduce waste at the source. It must pay for advanced sorting facilities, specialized transport fleets, new recycling centers, the continuous operation of the waste-to-energy turbines, the complex rehabilitation of old landfills, and a sprawling monitoring network. Let us look at the facts we have assembled. More than 1,200 trucks descending on a single landfill in the historical data. A state-of-the-art machine processing 5,666 tons a day, yet only handling 45% of the municipal load. And now, a strategy costing tens of billions of dirhams over 20 years. The bill did not arrive because Dubai ignored its garbage. The bill arrived because keeping the garbage completely invisible is becoming exponentially more expensive. In this high-stakes game of urban management, the city must win every single day. The trucks must arrive exactly on time, the incinerators must burn, the pipes must remain clear, the flow of waste cannot be permitted to pause. The garbage, on the other hand, only needs to win once, at a single bottleneck. Dubai has not been buried under a visible mountain of trash, and paradoxically, that is exactly what makes this story so chilling. The mountain has been decentralized. A portion of it lies buried in massive, highly engineered landfills far beyond the city center. A portion of it is currently moving through the city on thousands of heavy transport trucks. A portion of it is being blasted into steam inside the roaring furnaces of the Warsan turbines. But the largest portion of this mountain exists in the form of financial obligations that must be continuously paid, managed, and expanded. Dubai has successfully engineered a system powerful enough to keep the harsh consequences of its rapid growth out of sight. But this very system exposes a deep, inescapable paradox. The more the city develops, the more land, energy, machinery, and capital it must sacrifice simply to clean up what that development leaves behind. The waste never truly disappears. It only changes its shape, moving from a plastic bag, to a truck, to a furnace, to an ash pit. And all the while, the financial invoice required to maintain this cycle continues to grow. The true trap is not that Dubai lacks the ability to process its waste. The trap is that Dubai is forced to perpetually expand an incredibly expensive damage control system just to protect the very model of infinite growth that is causing the damage in the first place. A city only truly masters its waste when it figures out how to produce less of it, not merely when it builds a bigger machine to burn it away. If you appreciate documentaries that look beyond the glamorous brochures and investigate the hidden economic systems powering our world, please subscribe to the channel. The next warning sign of a city under pressure is rarely where the official marketing tells you to look. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on whether megacities can ever truly escape the consequences of their own consumption. Disclaimer: this video is an independent analysis based on publicly available data, official reports, and historical records up to the time of research. Economic conditions, tourism metrics, and infrastructure capabilities are constantly evolving. This documentary analyzes systemic pressures, urban planning models, and economic paradoxes. It is not intended to attack the residents, the workforce, or any specific demographic of the United Arab Emirates. The content provided is strictly for educational and analytical purposes and does not constitute financial, investment, or travel advice. Certain conclusions drawn are analytical inferences supported by the cited historical and municipal evidence.